Dadperfectrevenge. When my daughter told me, "Dad, you're too old to handle this kind of money," I should have seen the knife coming for my back. But you know what they say about hindsight? 3 days later, I was the one holding the knife. I'm Carl Thompson, 58 years old, and what happened next taught me that sometimes experience beats youth and wisdom trumps greed every single time. Let me tell you how I went from homeless widower to the man holding all the cards. Because folks, this story has more twists than a mountain highway, and every single one of them was worth the ride. 2 months ago, I was just Carl Thompson, widowed business consultant trying to figure out life without Linda. When my wife died of a heart attack at 56, I thought my world was ending. We'd been married 25 years, and she was the steady hand that kept everything balanced while I built my consulting firm from absolutely nothing into something worth $85 million. Linda Collins Thompson, she kept her maiden name professionally, but took mine for family, was the smartest woman I ever met, and losing her felt like losing half my brain. Victoria swooped in during my grief, like she was doing me the biggest favor in the world. "Dad, you can't possibly manage this big house alone," she'd say, standing in our living room with its cathedral ceilings and the stone fireplace Linda and I had designed together. Her voice dripped with what I thought was genuine concern. The maintenance, the stairs, all those memories. It's not healthy for a man your age. I should have paid closer attention to that phrase, a man your age. Coming from a 35-year-old daughter to her 58-year-old father who was still running a successful business and could outwork most men half his age. Victoria had always been smart, maybe too smart for her own good. When she married Tyler Pierce, this ambitious attorney with his expensive suits and calculator smile, I figured she'd found someone who could match her drive. I was proud of her real estate business, proud that my little girl had made something of herself in a tough industry. What I didn't realize was that she'd been studying me like a business case, figuring out my weak spots. After Linda's funeral at Sacred Heart Church, Victoria became increasingly insistent about my situation. She'd bring Tyler over for dinner in our formal dining room, the one with Linda's grandmother's china cabinet, and they'd corner me with glossy brochures for senior communities and retirement villages scattered across the mahogany table like some kind of real estate presentation. "Dad, these places are wonderful," Victoria would say, sliding a brochure toward me showing happy seniors playing shuffleboard. "You'd have people your own age, activities, no responsibilities. Look at this one, minus they have a golf course." What they meant was no inheritance to split, no inconvenient father to deal with, no witnesses to whatever they were planning. The final blow came on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. I'd been living in what Victoria now called our family home for 6 weeks since Linda's death, still sleeping in the guest room, because I couldn't bear to pack up the master bedroom with Linda's reading glasses still on her nightstand and her favorite lavender perfume still lingering in the walk-in closet. Victoria arrived unannounced around 9 a.m., her silver BMW crunching on the gravel driveway. Tyler was with her, and they both carried large moving boxes like they were making a delivery. I was sitting in the breakfast nook, reading the Wall Street Journal and drinking coffee from the mug Linda had given me for my 50th birthday. "World's Best Business, Dad," printed in fading blue letters. "Dad, we've made a decision," Victoria announced, setting her boxes down on the kitchen island like she was moving in. Her tone was the same one she'd used as a teenager when telling me she was going to a party whether I liked it or not. "Tyler got the partnership track at Morrison & Associates, and we need to move closer to downtown. This house is perfect for our growing family." I looked up from my paper, not quite understanding what I was hearing. "Move in." "But sweetheart, this is my home. This is where your mother and I built our life." Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, and I caught a glimpse of something cold and calculating underneath the concerned daughter act. "Actually, Dad, according to Mom's will, I inherited everything. The house, the business assets, all of it. I've been letting you stay here out of kindness, but it's time for you to find your own place." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I set down my coffee mug and my hand was shaking enough that the ceramic clinked against the granite countertop. "Victoria, that can't be right. Your mother and I discussed our wills many times. We sat right here at this table, going over the documents. Dad, you're confused," she said, and there was something almost pitying in her voice now. "Mom knew I'd take better care of the family legacy than—" She paused, choosing her words like a lawyer, than someone who might not understand modern financial management. The investment portfolios, the tax implications, the business transitions, it's all very complex. That's when Tyler decided to twist the knife deeper. He adjusted his tie and looked at me the way you'd look at a child who doesn't understand why he can't have ice cream for breakfast. "Carl, we understand this is difficult, but you're too old to handle this kind of money. The investment markets, the estate planning, the tax strategies, these require younger minds that can keep up with rapid changes. too old at 58. After building a multi-million-dollar consulting business from scratch, after 30 years of helping other companies solve problems they couldn't handle themselves, after surviving 3 recessions and coming out stronger each time. Find yourself a nice senior community, Victoria added with the same enthusiasm she might use to recommend a decent restaurant. There's a lovely place on Maple Street called Sunset Manor, very affordable for people on fixed incomes. They have bingo on Thursdays. Affordable. My daughter was about to inherit $85 million and suggesting I check into what amounted to subsidized housing for broke seniors. Bingo on Thursdays. I packed my life into 2 suitcases that afternoon. 25 years of marriage, 30 years of building a business, all fitting into luggage like I was going on vacation instead of being evicted by my own flesh and blood. Victoria watched from the front doorway, leaning against the frame Linda had painted white just last spring, checking her phone like I was making her late for something important. Tyler loaded my bags into their BMW with the efficiency of someone disposing of unwanted furniture. The trunk slammed shut with a sound that felt final. "Carl, you'll love having your independence again," he said, not quite meeting my eyes as he brushed imaginary dust off his hands. No more worrying about property maintenance or complex business decisions. No more stress about investment portfolios or market fluctuations. No more home, he meant. No more control over the company I'd built with nothing but determination and 80-hour work weeks. No more voice in decisions about the money Linda and I had sacrificed to accumulate. The Sunset Motel was exactly what you'd expect for $65 a night. The kind of place where traveling salesmen stayed when their expense accounts ran dry. Thin walls that let you hear every conversation in neighboring rooms. Coffee in the lobby that tasted like it had been brewing since the Clinton administration. And carpet with stains that probably had their own zip codes. The neon sign out front flickered between vacancy and no vacancy, whether they had rooms or not. Victoria handed me $300 in cash like she was tipping a bellhop after a weekend at the Ritz. 3 crisp hundreds, probably pulled fresh from the ATM. "This should cover you for a few days while you get settled, Dad. I'll have Tyler transfer some allowance money into your account once we sort through all the estate paperwork. Some allowance money from my own inheritance. Like I was a teenager getting spending money for good behavior." After they drove away in their BMW, tires crunching on the motel's cracked asphalt. I sat on that sagging mattress in room 237 trying to process what had just happened. The room smelled like industrial disinfectant trying to cover up decades of cigarette smoke and disappointment. Through the paper-thin walls, I could hear a TV playing game shows and someone having a heated phone conversation about child support payments. In the span of 4 hours, I'd gone from grieving widower in his own home to homeless senior citizen in a budget motel. The daughter I'd raised alone after Linda and I divorced when Victoria was 8. The girl I'd put through Northwestern University working 80-hour weeks had discarded me like expired medication. But sitting there in that depressing room with its water-stained ceiling and broken air conditioner, something started nagging at me. I've spent 30 years in business consulting, helping companies solve problems and spot inconsistencies in complex systems. You don't survive in that world without developing a nose for things that don't add up. My brain started working the way it did when a client's financial statements didn't match their story. Linda had always been meticulous about our financial planning. She'd worked as an accounting manager at Richardson & Associates for 15 years before focusing on the house in Victoria, and she understood money better than most financial advisors. She'd shown me our wills just 8 months before she died, sitting right there at our kitchen table with her reading glasses perched on her nose, explaining every provision like she was teaching a graduate course in estate planning. And I was absolutely certain that's not what those documents said, not even close. Linda had been traditional about some things, forward-thinking about others. She believed in taking care of family, but she also believed in fairness and protecting people from their own worst impulses. The woman who'd supported my business dreams when I was making $30,000 a year, who'd worked her own demanding job while I got the company off the ground, who'd sacrificed her own career advancement so I could travel for clients, that woman wouldn't have left me destitute and dependent on our daughter's charity. The next morning, after a night of listening to arguments through thin walls and the constant hum of the interstate, I used the motel's spotty Wi-Fi to search for Eddie Foster. He'd been our attorney for 15 years, handling everything from the house purchase to business contracts to our estate planning. His office was downtown in the Meridian building, a 20-story glass tower where serious law got practiced by serious people. The bus ride cost me $3.50 of my rapidly dwindling cash, but it felt necessary. Downtown looked different from a city bus than it did from my Mercedes. More real, somehow less insulated. Working people heading to jobs they needed, not jobs they chose. Eddie Foster's office was on the 12th floor, all dark wood paneling and leather-bound law books that probably cost more than most people's cars. Eddie was a solid man in his early 60s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of steady presence that made you trust him with your deepest secrets. When his secretary, an efficient woman named Mrs. Patterson, who'd been with the firm for 20 years, announced that Carl Thompson was there about his wife's estate, Eddie looked genuinely surprised. "Carl, my friend," he said, rising from behind a desk that could have served as an aircraft carrier. "I was wondering when you'd come in. I tried calling your house several times over the past month, but Victoria said you were traveling, taking time to process your grief," she said, working through things. Traveling, that's what my daughter had told him, working through things in some therapeutic journey that existed only in her imagination. "Eddie, I need to ask you about Linda's will," I said, settling into one of his leather chairs that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He looked genuinely puzzled, like I'd asked him to explain quantum physics. "Of course, Carl, but didn't Victoria provide you with your copy?" I gave her the original and several copies after the reading. She said she'd handle getting everything to you since you were dealing with. Well, the emotional aspects. My stomach dropped like I was in a free-falling elevator. There was a reading, Carl. You were supposed to be there. It was scheduled for 2 p.m. on March 15th, right here in this office. Victoria said you were too distraught to attend, that she'd handle everything and make sure you received your inheritance properly. She seemed very concerned about your emotional state. The blood drained from my face so fast I thought I might pass out. Eddie, I was never told about any reading. Victoria told me she inherited everything. She said Linda left her the house, the business assets, all of it. Eddie Foster's expression shifted from confusion to alarm, and I watched 15 years of professional composure crack like ice in spring. He reached for a thick file folder with my name written in Linda's neat handwriting, his movements suddenly urgent. "Carl, that's impossible. Your wife's will is very specific about your inheritance." Eddie pulled out a document I recognized immediately, Linda's neat signature at the bottom, witnessed and notarized by Mrs. Patterson and another paralegal I remembered from our signing appointment. But as Eddie began reading in his careful lawyer's voice, I realized Victoria had lied about absolutely everything. "I, Linda Collins Thompson, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath to my beloved husband Carl Thompson the following: our primary residence at 1247 Oak Ridge Drive, including all furnishings and personal effects. Additionally, I leave him 70% of all financial assets and business interests, totaling approximately $6 million. My head started spinning like I'd been hit with a baseball bat. $6 million, the house, 70% of everything we'd built together. Eddie continued reading, his voice growing more serious with each word. To my daughter Victoria Thompson Pierce, I leave 30% of the estate, approximately $2.5 million, to be distributed in increments beginning on her 30th birthday, contingent upon her treatment of her father following my death. Contingent upon her treatment of me. Linda had known somehow, in that quiet, analytical way of hers, she'd sensed exactly what Victoria might try to pull. She'd been watching, evaluating, making notes in that mental ledger she kept of everyone's character. "Eddie," I whispered, my voice barely working. Victoria told me I got nothing. She moved into my house, she gave me $300, and told me to find senior housing with Thursday bingo. The elderly attorney's face flushed red with anger. I'd never seen Eddie Foster lose his composure in 15 years of knowing him. "Carl, what Victoria has done is called elder abuse and inheritance fraud. She's committed multiple felonies here, but she had legal documents. She showed me papers with Linda's signature, forged most likely, or documents from an earlier draft that was never finalized. Your wife updated this will 8 months before her death, specifically because she was concerned about Victoria's attitude toward money and what she called entitlement issues. The room felt like it was spinning on its axis. All those times Victoria had rolled her eyes when I talked about business decisions, dismissed my opinions during family dinners, talked over me when I tried to contribute to conversations about investments or real estate trends. Linda had been watching it all, taking mental notes, making decisions about our daughter's character. There's more, Carl. The contingency provision specifically states that if Victoria fails to treat you with dignity and respect following Linda's death, her entire inheritance reverts to you instead. I stared at him, trying to process what I was hearing. Are you saying? I'm saying your daughter just cost herself $2.5 million. Her inheritance is now yours as well. You're not inheriting $6 million, Carl. You're inheriting the full $8.5 million plus the house and all business interests. The irony was so perfect it was almost beautiful. Victoria had been so eager to steal my inheritance that she'd triggered the exact clause designed to protect me from her greed. Linda had played chess while Victoria was playing checkers. What do I do now? I asked, my voice barely steady. Eddie smiled, and for the first time since Linda's death, I felt like someone was actually on my side. Now, my friend, we call the police about the fraud. Then we call Victoria and inform her that she's about to receive the education of her lifetime. Can she fight this legally with what money? She's about to discover that every account she thought she controlled actually belongs to you. Every investment, every business asset, every dollar, it's all frozen pending investigation of her fraudulent activities. I thought about Victoria in my house, probably already planning renovations with Linda's insurance money. Maybe shopping for new furniture online, calculating how this windfall would change her lifestyle. Tyler was probably already figuring out investment strategies for what he thought was their newfound wealth. They had no idea that their entire world was about to collapse like a house of cards in a hurricane. Eddie Foster's law office became command central for what he cheerfully called Operation Justice. He had Mrs. Patterson contact the police, the banks, and a private investigator named Diana Bennett while I sat in his conference room, still processing the magnitude of Victoria's deception. The forged documents are quite sophisticated, Detective Roy Martinez explained as he reviewed the fake will Victoria had shown me. He was a sharp-eyed man in his 40s, with the kind of methodical approach that comes from years of investigating white-collar crime. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. Someone planned this carefully, probably for months. You think Victoria had help? Almost certainly. Creating convincing legal forgeries requires specific knowledge and professional connections. We'll need to investigate whether Tyler or someone in his law firm network was involved. Investment-grade document fraud like this usually involves multiple people. Within 2 hours, every account had been frozen faster than a Minnesota lake in January. Victoria's credit cards, linked to what she thought were her new inheritance accounts, were declined at whatever expensive lunch she was probably enjoying. The house utilities, which she'd already had transferred to her name, were suspended pending ownership verification. The phone in Eddie's office rang at exactly 3:30 p.m. Mrs. Patterson answered with her usual professional efficiency, then looked at me with something approaching amusement. "Mr. Thompson, it's your daughter." She sounds. Distressed, I took the call in Eddie's private office, settling into his leather chair like I was preparing for battle. Because in a way, I was Dad. Where are you? There's some kind of terrible mix-up with the bank accounts. They're saying Mom's assets are all frozen. My cards aren't working. And some federal agent called asking questions about estate documents. "Hello, Victoria. I'm sitting in Eddie Foster's office." You remember him, don't you, Mom's attorney? The one who read the real will to an empty room while you told him I was traveling. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched for what felt like an eternity. I could almost hear Victoria's mind racing, trying to find some angle, some explanation that would get her out of the hole she dug for herself. "Dad, I don't know what you think you discovered, but I discovered that you're a liar and a thief, sweetheart. I also discovered that your mother was much smarter than either of us realized. She saw you coming from a mile away. You don't understand. I was protecting you from the complexity of managing all that money. You've never had to deal with modern investment strategies or I understand perfectly. You forged legal documents, committed federal fraud, and threw your 58-year-old father out of his own house because you thought I was too senile to notice the difference." Her voice turned sharp, desperate. "Dad, you're confused. The grief has been overwhelming, and someone is obviously taking advantage of your emotional state. These lawyers, they see vulnerable seniors, and the audacity was breathtaking. Even caught red-handed with her fingers in the cookie jar. Victoria was trying to gaslight me, make me doubt my own memory and judgment. Victoria, let me clarify something for you. Not only did you never inherit anything, but your actual inheritance, the $2.5 million your mother left you, is now mine as well, thanks to a lovely clause she included about treating me with dignity and respect. That's impossible. Detective Martinez is sitting right here if you'd like to discuss the impossibility of fraud charges with him." The phone went dead quiet. Through the silence, I could hear office sounds in the background, probably Tyler's law firm, where she'd run to figure out damage control. "Dad, please. Can we meet somewhere and talk about this reasonably? I'm sure we can work something out. Family should stick together." "Oh, we'll definitely be meeting soon at the courthouse when you're arraigned. Family should stick together. You're absolutely right. Too bad you forgot that lesson when you were stealing from yours. You wouldn't dare press charges against your own daughter." Something cold and final settled in my chest like winter moving in to stay. "Watch me." I hung up and looked at Eddie, who was grinning like we'd just won the lottery and solved world hunger at the same time. "How long before she's arrested?" "Detective Martinez has enough evidence for warrants. They'll pick them both up this evening." My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Dad, please don't do this. Think about the grandchildren." I showed the message to Detective Martinez, who smiled grimly. Emotional manipulation. Classic behavior pattern for this type of crime. Using family guilt when legal arguments fail, I typed back, "I'm thinking about them." They deserve to learn what happens when you steal from family. 20 minutes later, Tyler called. His voice had that careful lawyer tone that meant he was probably recording the conversation. Carl, surely we can resolve this privately. Victoria made some poor judgment calls, but involving law enforcement seems excessive. Think about the publicity, the family reputation. Tyler, did you help her forge those documents? A pause. Carl, that's not. You have to understand the pressure Victoria was under. She was genuinely worried about your mental state, your ability to handle complex financial decisions. So that's a yes. It wasn't malicious. She truly believed she was protecting you from making costly mistakes with your inheritance. By stealing it and throwing me into a motel, Tyler was quiet for a moment. Carl, please be reasonable. We're talking about family here. I was reasonable for 30 years building a business that's now worth millions. I was reasonable for 25 years of marriage, supporting both of you through college and career changes. I was reasonable when I trusted my daughter with sensitive information about our finances. Being reasonable didn't work out too well for me, Tyler. The police arrested Victoria at 8:15 p.m. while she was having dinner at Chez Laurent, an expensive downtown restaurant where she was apparently celebrating her inheritance with Tyler and another couple. According to Detective Martinez, she screamed about false arrest and demanded to call her lawyer, who turned out to be one of Tyler's golf buddies with zero experience in criminal defense law. Tyler was arrested at his law office the next morning. Diana Bennett, the private investigator Eddie had hired, traced the forged documents to a high-end printing service that Tyler's firm used for creating legal documents. Apparently, my son-in-law had quite the creative side when it came to document production. I spent my first night back in my own house in 2 months, walking through rooms that felt both familiar and foreign. Victoria had already moved her belongings into the master bedroom, replacing Linda's careful organization with her chaos of designer clothes and expensive cosmetics. I packed everything into garbage bags and left them on the front porch next to the morning newspaper. The house felt different now, not just because Linda was gone, but because I was finally seeing it as truly mine for the first time. For years, I'd maintained it around Linda's preferences, our shared vision of how we wanted to live. Now, looking around with clear eyes, I realized I could make it reflect who I was becoming, not just who I'd been. Eddie called the next day with updates. Victoria's bail is set at $75,000. Since all her accounts are frozen, she'll need to find someone else to cover it. What about Tyler? $150,000. The judge wasn't impressed with his creative approach to legal document preparation. Apparently, this isn't his first rodeo with questionable paperwork. The federal prosecutor offered plea deals, 15 months for Victoria, 18 for Tyler if they cooperated fully and made complete restitution. 15 months seemed light for stealing a man's entire life's work. But Eddie reminded me that sometimes justice isn't about the punishment. It's about the truth coming out and setting things right. The local newspaper picked up the story. Attorney and wife defraud elderly father in $8.5 million inheritance scheme. Victoria's real estate license was suspended pending investigation. Tyler's law firm terminated him immediately. Their reputations were finished in a town where reputation was everything. But more than legal victory, I had something I hadn't expected to find again: purpose. The next week, I established the Thompson Foundation for Elder Protection, using $1 million of my recovered inheritance to fund legal aid for seniors facing family financial abuse. 6 months later, I was standing in my renovated kitchen, reading applications for the Foundation's assistance program. Victoria had written me 12 letters from federal prison, a progression from self-justification to desperate apologies to angry accusations and back to pleading. I'd stopped opening them after the 6th one. Some relationships, once broken by betrayal this deep and calculated, can't be repaired with words from a jail cell. Victoria had made her choices with full knowledge of the consequences. Now she could live with the results. Every morning when I wake up in this house, my house, I'm reminded that respect isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn through your actions, your character, your treatment of others. And sometimes when family forgets that lesson, life has a way of teaching it to them the hard way. Victoria taught me something valuable, though I doubt she meant to. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming everything your enemies never thought you could be. And every day I work with the Foundation, helping other seniors fight back against family financial abuse. I'm reminded that wisdom and experience still count for something in this world. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've got elderly parents, maybe give them a call tonight. Make sure they know someone's got their back. Because family should protect family, and when they don't, sometimes a man's got to protect himself. I learned that the people who underestimate you the most are often the ones closest to you, and that's exactly what makes your victory so much sweeter when it comes. Age isn't about how many years you've lived. It's about how much fight you've got left when everything's on the line.